He's the well-groomed businessman who committed one of Australia's biggest frauds, $250 million. He's facing up to 60 years in jail, but you won't have heard of him because his identity has been kept secret until now.
I can't make any comment about that, sorry.
He came across as a credible person. That was why it was so shocking for everyone involved when it became apparent he was an out-and-out fraudster.
William O'Dwyer, the dapper dresser responsible for making 1,000 investors lose their shirts.
People who put their entire life savings into this Ponzi scheme.
Not just loss, but ultimate loss.
They cried in front of me when I talked to them. They used their super funds to do this investment.
$250 million fraud.
Where does this rate?
Well, it's probably the biggest fraud in Australian history.
Property law and fraud expert Matthew Bransgrove from Bransgrove's Lawyers was shocked when O'Dwyer's property development company, Rayland Group, went belly up 4 years ago, owing $323 million.
When I first heard that Rayland had collapsed, I thought, well, he did a bridge too far and his judgment was out. But this was on another level altogether. He was basically Australia's Bernie Madoff.
Excuse me, William.
A Current Affair first tracked down Rayland Managing Director William O'Dwyer in 2019.
I feel awful for the stress it's caused everyone.
ASIC investigated. It alleged between 2015 and 2018, O'Dwyer dishonestly drew down on finance facilities, totalling $251.5 million, and that O'Dwyer deceived lenders into believing that pre-sales deposits from apartment buyers were held in a trust account.
There was no way it could have gone on without the banks that were providing the senior debt on the projects knowing about it. But in fact, once the receiver issued his report, it became clear that Rayland was keeping two distinct sets of books. One which was keeping track of the Ponzi investors and the other one which was used to deceive the banks.
O'Dwyer used the money to fund his next projects, but eventually his luck ran out when his builder folded.
It was like a gambler who keeps taking money that doesn't belong to them and taking it down to the racecourse to see if they can get their money back. Nothing's been built yet, it's just that one tower.
Bransgrove's lawyer's partner, Vivian Zheng, dealt with over 400 mainly Chinese-Australian buyers who got burned on their deposits. She helped investigate a class action against the lenders for poor due diligence.
The class action is dead in the water because it's a sophisticated Ponzi scheme.
So the banks can't be held accountable in the class action?
No, there is no negligence by the banks.
O'Dwyer was eventually charged with 6 counts of fraud. He faced court in July, but due to legal reasons, media couldn't report on the case.
The receiver's report made it very clear that there was fraud going on and that Mr. O'Dwyer was up to his armpits in it. So I can't see what was the idea of suppressing these criminal charges.
In August, O'Dwyer fell on his sword, pleading guilty to all fraud charges. A suppression order protecting his identity expired at midnight.
Justice doesn't just need to be done, it needs to be seen to be done.
Throughout this drawn-out ordeal, O'Dwyer tried many twists and turns to dig himself out of a hole. He even offered to sell discounted apartments to affected Rayland investors that were to be built by another developer. That developer was none other than fugitive top-place director Jean Nassif, who continues to live in Lebanon, evading Australian authorities.
It was an act of complete desperation, and desperados are desperados.
O'Dwyer once oversaw his empire from behind his gated mansion in Sydney's well-heeled eastern suburbs. Now he faces spending the rest of his life in a confined cell for being the architect behind one of Australia's mega swindles.
He tried to essentially illegitimately get his chestnuts out of the fire. That's a tragedy for him personally, but what you've got to understand is the impact on other people is enormous.
Sorry, I can't make any comment.
Potentially 6 decades locked up. Compare that to the 1,000 investors who lost their life savings.